Hello, I'm Matthew King. Today's short film is about Defying Gravity, a song by Stephen Schwartz from the musical Wicked. I'm discussing it really in response to my daughter who's studying this for her music GCSE. In the original stage show the song is in D flat major, but my daughter's GCSE notes have put it into D major because it's easier to study that way, and the online score is in D, so we're going to discuss it as if it's in D major. So Defying Gravity comes at the end of Act 1 of the musical, and it's the climax of the act. Schwartz seems to have tapped in, presumably very deliberately, to the old operatic tradition of recitative and aria, because he begins the song with what is in effect a recitative, and I'll explain what that is in a minute. We'll have a quick listen to a recitative in Mozart from Don Giovanni, and you'll see that recitative is the moment where a character is really declaiming text, singing, but almost in a speech style, and the accompaniment tends to consist of chords, just single articulated chords separated from each other. The musical component is very much in the background. It's really just chords that are accompanying text. Text is the dominant thing, and it just flows along with just occasional chords to accompany it. And then, at the end of the recitative, you go into an aria, and it's at the moment that an aria begins that you have the music sort of takes wing, text becomes less dominant, and so music starts to become the dominant component. So there's a slight shifting of emphasis, and in a really good opera you kind of have to have moments of recitative where text is dominant, and you also need aria moments when music becomes dominant. That's the way that a good music drama breathes. It moves between those two states, and it's the same to some extent in musicals, or at least in this musical. Stephen Schwartz uses that device very skillfully. In Schwartz's recitative, you get something you wouldn't get in Mozart, which is parallel harmony. Mozart would have thought parallel harmony a bit primitive, but parallel harmony works in this context because you get Glinda singing, actually speaking and then singing, and just these parallel chords dropping from D down to B, so it's like a chromatic drop of a third, then swinging back up an augmented chord, and then starting a semitone below, the same process from D flat. This is Elphaba's response. I hope you're happy, I hope you're happy too, and so on. So you get this chromatic drop and chromatic rise accompanying the recitative. So the recitative climaxes with both voices, Glinda, who's got a higher voice, a soprano voice, and Elphaba, who's more of a mezzo, a lower voice, they join together on this climactic phrase, so though I can't imagine how. Apologies for my voice. That's actually a plagal cadence. But it's an exciting plagal cadence because instead of going from 4 to 1, you go, the bass rises, so it floats. I can't imagine how. It's also a sort of Neapolitan. It's a semitone above where it should be, so it has a kind of elevated, lifted character, and then it slips back into key. I hope you're happy right now, and then we drop into a motivic element that remains constant throughout the song, and it's based on, it's a sort of leitmotif. Leitmotif is a Wagnerian term. Wagner invented leitmotifs. They are musical motifs that have a symbolism, an association, a connotation throughout the drama. So this, which is played as a kind of syncopated rhythm, it's played by the brass instruments, and it's broadly based on the Yellow Brick Road motif from the original Wizard of Oz movie. You'll remember that's follow the yellow brick road. So you've got a rising figure and a falling figure. Now I realise it's kind of different, and yet you can hear in the bass the rising da 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 da, and that's answered by a little motif, another motif, also based on material for The Wizard of Oz. You'll remember somewhere over the rainbow. So that's a little motif that's derived. Do you see how clever this all is? That's derived from the original material in The Wizard of Oz. And Wicked is full of this kind of thing, allusions to motivic material from The Wizard of Oz. Very interesting, very clever. So then we have a sudden tritone shift into a new key, F. And then Glinda sings for a little bit in F. She just has these suspended phrases singing, you can still be with a wizard, you can carry on doing what you've always done, and so forth. And Elphaba responds, but I don't want to, no. I can't want it anymore. And we have a sort of elaborated imperfect cadence. In other words, instead of having a perfect cadence into F, we have a drop into D, and this is going to be the key of the aria. So this is the moment when we hit the aria. And the aria starts with the same motif, syncopated, follow the yellow brick road motif with the somewhere over the rainbow thing. And then we get tremolandi to give a sense of the excitement of the moment. Very similar, if you remember, to the Mozart aria that we listened to a moment ago with the tremolandi at the beginning of the aria. This is the moment when we sense the excitement. And it's very clever that Stephen Schwartz, at the moment of arrival in D, you have a sense that here we are. We've been through loads and loads of keys and we've rushed all over the place. There's been something very chaotic and quite sort of quite ungrounded about the musical material so far. And that's very deliberate because it isn't grounded. It's all about two people in conflict. But now we arrive at D, there's a sense of homecoming, and then we hear the verse of the song. The other thing that's interesting is the variety of tempo in this song. So the first verse is a kind of what we call color parte. It's the orchestra is accompanying, or the band is accompanying the vocalist quite freely. So she has the freedom to take her time over the vocal line, which of course is in this sort of syncopated style. With the vocal lines sort of going over the bar lines. The accompaniment is also just syncopated as well, so it sort of floats, and you're moving between chord 1 and chord 4. So everything is stepping up a fourth, stepping down a fourth, and then finally stepping up another fourth to what we call a flattened leading note. So we're going from D to G, and then eventually to C. And it's interesting to see how those harmonic shifts underpin the text setting. So you've got this, I'm through with playing by the rules. So a really huge jump of an 11th, the rules, but works very well vocally if you're a good singer. I'm not a good singer, but a good singer can make that jump. In the original key, I'm through with playing by the rules of someone else's game. So yeah, we've got this shifting from 1 to 4, and then the rules of someone else's game, that's where we shift up the next 4, so we're stepping up again. The second half of the chorus moves from that flattened leading note, too late for second guessing, too late to go back to sleep, it's time to trust my instincts, close my eyes and leap. And you'll have noticed the bass line gradually climbing up from the flat leading note and on up the scale until the point at which we're ready to go into the chorus, we've reached the dominant for the first time. So for anyone who's composing out there, this is a lesson in how to work with quite simple material and hold certain things in reserve. The dominant, which is the most important point on the scale apart from the tonic, has been held in reserve until we reach the chorus. And that inexorable climb, very skillfully managed, until she sings "Close My Eyes and Leap," and that's the moment when we hit the dominant and we get this huge, that wasn't very good, this leaping figure in the orchestra, and then straight into the famous ostinato figure of the chorus. So while she's singing, "It's time to fly," with these great vaulting phrases, we've also got the orchestra, the chords in the orchestra just playing around the dominant, chord 6, chord 4, chord 5, but it's essentially 5, the main chord in the centre of that. And then this figure at the top, I was trying to explain this to my daughter the other day, these are not triplets, it's not going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, it's going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you've got threes that are cross-rhythmic. In other words, they're in a pattern that's going against the beat structure. So it's like you're going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So it's a constant friction between the rhythm of the ostinato and the beats. And that's what gives the chorus its marvellous energy. If it wasn't energised by that ostinato, it'd be rather dull. It's time to try defying gravity. It'd just be like a hymn or something, but it is rather like a hymn, and Schwartz's tunes often are a bit hymn-like. But what makes it interesting is the fact that you've got cross rhythms here and then a syncopated 1, 2. The bass line is just ahead of the beat all the time. Very interesting collision of rhythmic elements, slightly out of phase with each other. In terms of tempo, the chorus is the first moment when we hit a regular tempo. And that regular tempo carries on from now on. At the end of the chorus, Schwartz does quite a skillful thing, rhythmically very disruptive thing, which is he has, "Can't I make you understand?" You get these triplets coming in from Glinda, so she interjects. And the interruption of her voice also has a rhythmic interruption because her triplets collide with the rhythm of the chorus in quite a striking way. And of course those triplets are "Follow the Yellow Brick Road," so again there's a reference to the Wizard of Oz there. We're then into the second verse. This time the verse is at the same tempo as the chorus, and so we get through the verse much quicker, almost twice as fast as the first verse. And this is all about not accepting limits and so on. This is the moment to bring in the great Austrian composer Arnold Schoenberg, who once said in a class, John Cage wrote this down in the class, Schoenberg said, "Composition is repetition and variation. And variation itself is repetition, with some things changed and some things not changed." So in other words, when you're composing, you have to repeat some things, and some things you vary, and variation itself is a form of repetition. And here we are with Stephen Schwartz. He's so imaginative, really, because the second verse, he doesn't just boringly repeat it, he has it going at a different tempo, and the vocal line is different as well. So everything is different, the speed, the concision of the writing, and the things that the vocal line is doing. Then we go into the second chorus, the Defying Gravity chorus, and again the vocal line changes. We have an element of variation there. And as we come out of it, we go into a bridge passage. And what's quite interesting is here we are again on our old friend, the flattened leading note. Do you remember this at the beginning? That's the flattened leading note, is that third chord that's so important in the verse. Here it has this wonderful function of a sort of suspended moment where time itself stops. Because you've landed not on the tonic, but the note below, it has that function of something just hanging in the air, and also the ostinato figure, these rushing semitones have a kind of glitter, which means that Schwartz is able to suspend time. That's the effect of this bridge. Tells you something about how to structure a song, incidentally. There's no point doing anything in a structure unless it has a meaning. Here the bridge comes in simply because it has the meaning of suspending the motion of the song. And we're caught for a moment in this tonality, C major. And we get this unlimited, which is a motif that runs all the way through the musical, and of course comes from Somewhere Over the Rainbow, so it's a motif from the original Wizard of Oz. Unlimited. This is possibly the most interesting passage in terms of the harmony of the song. So we've got this, I'll try and play it through. We get this material, the C major and the ostinato, unlimited. These lovely parallel harmonies. Do you remember at the beginning we had parallel chords moving around chromatically? Here they're moving around diatonically. It sounds almost like Aaron Copland. There's something very American about that sort of open progressions, parallel progressions. Surprising. Glinda, she sings the word Glinda. We have C minor, the subdominant. The whole section's in G, so C minor, then back to G. Now here's an interesting thing. We drop to B flat and E flat, which is the Neapolitan. Now, I'll need to stop for a moment and explain what a Neapolitan region is. So if you're in a key, in the original stage show, we'd be in D flat, and the Neapolitan is the semitone above that. That's D, if I can explain it that way. I'll give an example in that key, but in the minor, C sharp minor. And this is the famous beginning of Beethoven's Moonlight. So you start in C sharp minor, bass drops to B, then we go to A, and then we go to the Neapolitan, D. That's a semitone above C sharp. So there's our tonic, and there's the flattened supertonic, just a semitone above, and it has this marvellously rich, emotional character halfway in Beethoven between a sense of lift, a kind of lifting quality, but also an extraordinary melancholy. As you go up to the Neapolitan, and then you can cadence, Beethoven cadences back to the tonic from there. So it's that semitone. In Schwartz, it's the same progression actually. There's a fight we cannot win, and then we're back in the key. So this Neapolitan region enables you to just go to a sort of alternative universe, and then whoop, change your gear and back we are. It has this marvellous emotional sort of jolt, this kind of that your heart sort of gets slightly tugged by the harmonic effect of that. We go back into the chorus. And then, just to be very concise about what happens from now on, coming out of the second chorus, we have a curious little sort of interpolation of motifs. The band plays the motif that normally begins the verse. Then we get this funny little, in a completely different key, in B flat, the same motif, and it presented in kind of medieval style with flutes and recorders even. I don't know why that happens, so please, if you know, comments below, because I'd be very interested in knowing whether that's a reference to something else. But anyway, that's a momentary interpolation. Then that leads very skillfully into a return of the opening recitative, but with this more sustained accompaniment, and Glinda and Elphaba sing the same text, I hope you're happy, I hope you're happy too. But whereas they sang it ironically at the beginning of the song in a kind of angry way, I hope you're happy, I hope you're happy too, and so on, here it's genuine, as a genuine I hope you're happy. In other words, there's a character of reconciliation that comes in at the end of the song. Same accompaniment, but much more sustained. Everything, as I said before, is, as Schoenberg said, about repetition and variation. So you've got these two elements being handled very skillfully through the song. We go through this sustained, reconciled version of the duet recitative, and then we have the two voices in thirds together. I hope you're happy, my friends. So we have this what jazz musicians would call a tritone substitution. It's a perfect cadence, but with an augmented fourth below in the bass, D flat, and then we're in C major, my friend, and these pulsing fourths, and then again these fourths building up these suspensions, and then we land on the final verse. So Elphaba sings the final verse, varied again, so there's a plagal cadence into that. So if you care to find me, look to the western sky. So the melody's different. As someone told me lately. Now, the someone who's told her this is the Wizard of Oz himself, who in his previous song, A Sentimental Man, sings this phrase, everyone deserves the chance to fly. So that phrase has been sung to her by the Wizard of Oz, and it's rather marvellous the way it's interpolated here into the song. As someone told me lately, everyone deserves a chance to fly, and off she goes about flying and so on, into the final chorus, which is very triumphant. And leading into this marvellous coda, where the chorus, in a very Puccinian manner, bursts in with, look at her, she's wicked, with these sort of medieval style organum parallel faiths. And then that leads into this, so we've got to bring her, you get these polychords, as if the orchestra is being torn apart. Stravinskian polychords, actually. C major in the right hand, F in the left, B flat in the right, E flat in the left, C in the right, D flat in the left. That's a pretty dissonant chord, and then resolving on D, so you get this marvellously tense effect. And of course she's singing about how no wizard that there is or was is ever going to bring me down. So she's singing about not being brought down, and they're singing about bringing her down. So you've got the collision of those two elements. And of course, this is a moment where she's sung a song of liberation, which immediately activates the hostile response. This is what happens in life. When you come out in some sort of dramatic way, you encounter the opposition. And she does. Now, Puccini style effect, I'll show you the reference. If you look at the end of Tosca, the marvellous moment where Tosca, her lover, has been shot, and she flings herself famously from the balcony. The chorus is getting very animated. There's all sorts of sort of chaotic elements going on around her, and then she flings herself off the balcony, not defying gravity at all, in fact the opposite, but it seems to me to be a similar effect. So I hope you've enjoyed this little tour around Defying Gravity by Stephen Schwartz. If you've got a question that you want to put to us, please do so, and we'll try to respond, maybe even make a video about it. And please like, share and subscribe. If you're feeling generous, please donate to Patreon. The details are below.